Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Kelly Ballard, Dave Patterson, and Jim Fight. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. Elon Musk is having a heck of a good time trolling the media on Twitter. Earlier this month, he labeled National Public Radio as state-run media. Wow. Now PBS has decided their feelings are being hurt as well. And as you can imagine, it's gone crazy. Well, Musk does refer to himself as the chief twit from Twitter files, and now the exodus by the self-proclaimed independent journalists. Tensions are reaching a fevered pitch. Andrew, what's Musk up to?
So before I begin, I would like to say that it's a complete honor that I'm sharing the screen with Kelly Ballard. It's my first time. So,
oh my God, Andrew, answer the question.
Yeah. So as you said in your opening, Elon Musk, he's adding all these labels to media outlets' Twitter accounts. These labels inform Twitter that these media outlets, whether it's NPR or PBS, are either state affiliated or government funded. Now, the problem is that these media outlets are crying or whining about these designations, but they're absolutely correct about it. You know, they say that they receive very little funding and that they're not controlled by their editorial content is not controlled by the government. But if you read Joe Schaefer's reporting on the subject, and he's quite passionate about this issue, is that they do receive a hefty amount of money from the taxpayers. But the latest one I personally love is the designation that CBC is government funded. Now, CBC is a government-owned media property in Canada. Now, they're whining, saying, "Oh, this is unfair because it gives the impression that Trudeau runs our editorial content." But we all know this. Any Canadian knows that CBC leans quite left. It gets $1 billion from taxpayers. Anytime any conservative says we should trim its budget, there is always complaining from the left. So overall, what Elon Musk is doing is just, providing light into how these media outlets provide money, and then it questions how they report their coverage.
Dave?
Yes.
I got to ask you, because I don't think you're the biggest Twitter guy out there, but have you ever seen anybody act so stupid? Just all these people taking their ball and going home?
Well, the fact is that they're being called out for what they are. And I think that that's always troubling for any media outlet to be described the way they really are. And so I think that, PBS and NPR, there's a reason why it's called the People's Broadcasting System, because they are left. They do parrot what the Biden administration has in terms of talking points. So I don't, it's not like a shocker for the American people to realize that it is, in fact, an arm of the federal government, for heaven's sakes.
All right. Well, but when you look at what their numbers are, their public funded dollars don't seem to be that horrible. I mean, it seems to be a very small percentage of their budget, unless I'm completely reading that wrong. Jim, what do you know about that? I mean, does that consider them swayable with a small amount of public funding?
Well, it depends on what your definition of is, Sarah. The there's they like to talk about. I think NPR says that their federal funding is less than 1% of their total funding, but that's we're talking direct taxpayer funding. That doesn't account for whatever they get from the Corporation for Public Broadcast, which is funded by charitable donations that can be written off as a tax expense, as well as actual directly taxpayer funded grant money. So it's kind of like it's kind of like when Planned Parenthood talks about how abortion only accounts for so much of our business. They're not telling you the whole story, and they're playing with the meaning of the words. But it's this is I want to highlight real quick one thing that from the official NPR statement on this from the CEO, John Lansing. He says, and I quote, "NPR stands for freedom of speech and holding the powerful accountable. It is unacceptable for Twitter to label us this way." Like those two sentences back to back, the irony, and that it's completely lost on him is great.
Isn't Musk? I mean, Kelly, you kind of pick up on this here and there. I know you're not the biggest Twitter bug, but isn't Musk just toying with people? Is he just poking the bear or what?
Oh, of course. He's poking the bear, but he's also bringing to attention things that people don't want known about them. What media outlet wants to be called out for the truth when it looks bad against them? Andrew, wasn't it something about how they wrote about Trump, and then they were all upset because former President Trump was taking away their funding?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of how Trump responded to these media outlets, but it wouldn't be surprising if they were complaining about not getting this money. But I think in this day and age, I mean, they have to be careful about what they say. They have to pair what the government says, because if they lose at least, let's say, a percent of what they claim they get, if they lose that can really hurt them in this environment, because the media sector is in, or at least heading into, a recession. Advertising dollars are down. Public readership, of course, is down. So overall, the whole media landscape, overall, no matter what you are, you have to be careful what you say, because you don't want to poke the bear, as Sarah alluded to. So you just have to be careful, keep your head down, just never question what the government says, what the government does, and just continue being a stenographer for the state.
Unless you're Elon Musk. So
it's the richest man in the world. You can do whatever you want.
It's funny you bring up Trump, Kelly, because like Trump, Elon Musk is a master troll. And that's what he's doing here. It's like he said when he walked into Twitter HQ with that sink in his arms. Let that sink in.
Right.
I think too, Sarah, that if you pull a thread through this conversation and you flip it just a little bit, if in fact the amount of government funding for PBS and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is so small, then let's take it away. It won't matter to you, right? It can't be of any significance if it's so small. But try to do that, and there is all hell to pay inside the Beltway.
Yeah, they're complaining about that. And then there's also that they may get less than 1% from the actual, from the government. But I think, as Joe Schaefer wrote, they get a lot of their other funding from, other organizations that get a lot of their funding from the government. So, how do you want to break that?
I wouldn't use the term money laundering, but what's a better term than that?
It's like Inception, a dream within a dream, taxpayer money within taxpayer money.
Right.
Well, it's like, there's a difference between what's acceptable for the government and everyone else. I mean,
is that like compound interest, Andrew? Is that like compound interest?
But what's funny too is that in Canada, I mean, I guess in Canada we subsidize heavily all media outlets, conservative, left, whatever the case. So if Musk wanted to do it, he could say the same thing about other newspapers. He could say the same thing about the Globe and Mail or the National Post, because a couple of years ago Trudeau set up a journalism fund where any newspaper could access. But what's funny though is that who's leading that charge are left-leading journalists and media outlet leaders. So of course, again, that ties to my previous point. But you have to be careful what you say if you want to get access to taxpayer money.
Yep. Well, there you have it, folks. If you miss seeing those publicly funded tweets, be sure and let us know. We'll look into it for you. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank DiOrio. I'm Sarah Calgill, filling in for the one and only Lisa K. Donner. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth matters.